This is my abnormal project. Inside the Mind of Albert Fish. Part 1. Biographical Information. His mother suffered from hallucinations and other members of his family struggled with severe mental illnesses. At least 2 of his family members died in asylums. Sent to St. John's Orphanage, Fish was punished severely by his teachers. They would rip off his clothes and whip him while the other students watched. The psychological damage had already been done, and he continued with bedwetting until age 11. In his later teenage years, he changed his name from Hamilton to Albert so that he was no longer mocked by his school friends as Ham and Eggs. In 1898, Fish's mother arranged to marry a marriage between him and Anne Mary Huffman, a young lady 9 years his junior. During their 19 years of married life, they had 6 children together. Then Huffman left Fish for another man. It was this rejection and betrayal that seamlessly triggered a much darker side of Fish. Albert Fish was diagnosed with 2 different disorders. The first one was insanity, which he was diagnosed with during his trial. The second was sexual sadism disorder. He was diagnosed with this disorder after he died. This led to him not being treated for either one. Part 2. Criminal Activity. What was the nature of these crimes? 3 of 12 plus killed, 3 plus victimless crimes, 2 sexually assaulted, 1 attempted abduction, 1 attempted, 1 intended, and then 0 to 100 plus raped. What was the span for the crimes? How many crimes? He had three confirmed victims and 9 to 100 plus possible claimed. Span of crimes was 1924 to 1932. His signatures and souvenirs was postmortem manipulation and dismemberment, and consumption of the victim's body parts. He carried writing about the practice in his pockets. When he was arrested, Fish confessed to the murders of other young children whom he claimed to have eaten. During his trial that lasted 10 days, Fish's attorney, James Dempsey, attempted to persuade the jurors that Fish was a family man who was himself the victim of an abusive childhood. Dempsey also tried to use an insanity defense. He asked the jurors if a man who has killed and eaten children could really be sane. After the murder of Grace Budd, Fish wrote an anonymous letter to her mother describing disturbing details of how he had murdered the young girl. This is what he wrote. I took her to an empty house in Westchester. I had already picked out. When she got there, I told her to remain outside. She picked wildflowers. I went upstairs and stripped off all my clothes. I knew if I did not, I would get her blood on them. When all was ready, I went to the window and called her. Then I hid in a closet until she was in the room. When she saw me all naked, she began to cry and tried to run downstairs. I grabbed her and she said that she would tell her mama. The letter was so twisted that it was believed at first it to be a sick prank. However, Fish had left a clue. On the envelope were the letters NYPCBA, which stood for the New York Private Schaffhauser's Benefit Association. The letter was traced to an old rooming house where Fish had checked out only days before. When he returned to the address, the police were finally able to make an arrest and end his reign of terror. There was no doubt among the jurors that Fish was insane. All found him guilty and sane anyways. The judge sentenced Fish to death. Is he still alive? Fish died January 16, 1936. He died of capital punishment at the time and was buried in the Sing Sing Prison Cemetery. Part 3. Characterizing the Serial Killer. He was a vampirist, serial killer, serial rapist, pedophile, cannibal, lonely heart killer, abductor, and was incinerator once. Albert Fish was a lust killer. He raped his victims and then ate the rest of their bodies. They generally take the time to torture or manipulate their victims. This type of serial killer is often portrayed in fictional books and movies. Here's my works cited.